Welcome back to another episode of the Black Ordinary Podcast, a monthly conversation about Black art, Black archives, and Black autonomy. My name is Kaitlyn B. Jones, and I'm your host and the proud founder of the Black Ordinary Project. The Black Ordinary Project is a multimedia platform, resource hub, and national database of community archives and community-based archival projects dedicated to preserving Black American history and culture. The Black Ordinary Podcast is one of the many ways that the Black Ordinary Project platforms Black artists, Black archivists, Black historians, Black community members, Black community leaders, working to preserve the collective memories of Black America. On this episode, I am so excited to be in conversation with Maya June Mansour. Maya June Mansour is a multidisciplinary artist with roots in Black America, Iran, and Palestine. Her practice explores themes of healing and justice using photography, bookmaking, and mixed media. In 2022, Maya was a recipient of the Image Equity Fellowship supported by Google and Aperture for her photo series Light Brown Butterfly. She has shown her work at Pioneer Works in New York, Root Division in San Francisco, and with the Los Angeles Center for Photography. In addition to her own practice, Maya is a co-founder and steward of Black Image Center, a community photography space in Los Angeles that redistributes storytelling resources from the creative and entertainment industries in Hollywood to LA's Black residents. Through her work at Black Image Center, Maya has facilitated collaborations with partners including the Getty, Art Center College of Design, and Four Freedoms. I'm so excited for you to hear about Maya's work and to listen in on all the great things that Black Image Center is doing in the Los Angeles community. Enjoy. Hi, Maya.
Hi.
It's so good to see you.
You too. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to hear all about the work that you're doing and all the work that Black Image Center is doing in the community. Before we get into that, I would love to kick off the episode with our usual opening segment, Extraordinarily Ordinary. This platform, one of the central ideas is that Black people, regardless of their achievements or their status, are extraordinarily ordinary in their own way, despite maybe not even being mentioned in the history books. And so I want to open up every podcast episode giving the opportunity for guests to speak a name and tell a story about somebody that is special to you or special to the work that you do. So I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, totally. This was such a fun prompt and like something that I really enjoyed getting to think about. I think about this person a lot, but I actually don't know their name. But the person that I wanted to talk about today was a participant in one of our Black Family Archive programs at Black Image Center, which, if you're not familiar, is a program that we offer where folks from the community can come and bring their family photos, and they work with professional Black archivists to digitize their work. And we also work with a really incredible photo conservator who works with families on talking about the best way to preserve their photos based off of the type of paper that they were printed on or the type of ink. And I think that there's kind of these parts of our culture around photo preservation, like those notebooks that have this sticky, like kind of film that you stick on. I learned those are really bad for your photos.
Yeah.
And so just doing this work, but there was one participant that came in about 2 years ago who came in with, I think, either her son or her nephew. And she had a scrapbook, which is cool because some people come in just with loose photos and photo albums, but this person had this scrapbook that was really kind of meticulously put together, and she wanted to scan kind of the full page of the book to kind of get the full effect.
Yeah.
And after chatting with her a little more, she shared that this scrapbook was actually passed down to her from her mom, and it was started by the women in her family like multiple generations before her.
Wow.
And so it's kind of this like living, breathing family heirloom document. And so I was so honored that she brought it to us to get it digitized. And then she pointed out that her great-grandmother had written down by hand recipes in that book. So it wasn't just images and documents, but it was also literally handwritten recipes. And I just thought that on its own was so amazing that she has access to those things. Even when we know our recipes, like they're not written down, you
Yeah.
know? So the
Right.
fact that she had that knowledge and it was written down kind of like in that first person primary source way was
Mm.
so cool to me. And then she told us that she has a TikTok where she makes the recipes from that book for her family. And so
Wow.
she's kind of keeping this tradition and these recipes alive in a really cool way and sharing them on the internet. And it's someone that I think about so much because, we're called the Black Image Center and we're all photographers and we're really kind of started with this idea of like image-based storytelling. But there's so many different people that come through our doors, and this person is not a photographer at all. And their scrapbook happened to have photos in it, but what was the most interesting to me was these recipes. And so it makes me think a lot about how photography as a medium for storytelling is also like such a carrier for food and culture and music and all of these other kind of connecting points that we have with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'd love to talk about, or hear about rather, your start, kind of what got you interested in photography in the first place, maybe a little bit about your upbringing, and maybe if that feeds into your practice at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I started taking photos like really before I can remember. So I think my mom remembers me kind of gravitating towards a camera around the age of 4. And I always really was curious when we were taking family photos, and I always wanted to play with cameras. And my mom was just a really good mom and nurtured the things that I was interested in. And so she would buy me kind of toy cameras to play with. And then that kind of evolved into me being really interested in film and experimental processing. And so when I was in kind of like middle school, I got really interested in Flickr and Tumblr. And there's this photography brand called Lomography, and they make kind of like really cheap experimental cameras and film. And that for me was like a really exciting way to get into photography because um, it wasn't a really expensive piece of equipment that if I dropped it or if it broke, it would be a really big deal. Um, and yeah, I just got started really playing with film, and I would say that's probably an accurate description of my practice now, is just playing with film. I still use a lot of those cameras and experimental processes in my work today. Um, and I think that I really like experimental photography because it, I think, does a really good job representing communication. And I grew up with a lot of language barriers because my dad's from the Middle East, and so, and my mom is American, and so there's a lot of spaces where like maybe my language skills weren't good enough, or my mom didn't have the tools to communicate with one side of the family, and then vice versa. And so I think I was always attracted to art because visual languages kind of can transcend the written and verbal languages that were given depending on what culture we're from. And so I always really liked using different cameras and different films and different processes to represent the nuances that language can't always represent.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And are you originally from the Los Angeles area?
No, I was born and raised in Nashville, and then I moved to the West Coast for college when I was 18. I went to a school called Evergreen in Olympia, Washington,
Mm.
and I moved down to LA a couple of years after that.
Nice. And when did you meet your co-founders for Black Image Center?
So none of us really knew each other before we got into this project. I met all of them on Instagram in 2020. I saw an Instagram post that was asking these questions um, around like what would our world look like if Black people had more of a say behind the camera and not just in front of the camera. And I just DM'd the person that posted it and was like, hey, I want to get involved in whatever this is. And then I just got put in a group chat, and then the other people in the group chat ended up eventually kind of being my founders of what is now Black Image Center. Um, and that was in 2020 when there was so much conversation around police brutality and blackness and representation. And I think the country was having this reckoning, but also like every field was having their own kind of reckoning. And so I definitely see Black Image Center as being born out of that moment in history and that movement.
Yeah. We'll be right back after a short break. And we're back. We've had a podcast guest previously who's doing community archivist work, and they are not interested in nonprofit status. That's not the path that they think best fits their work. And so I'm curious, how did it go from kind of this like-minded, really grassroots like community initiative to nonprofit status? What are some things that you talked about among your founders before deciding to go 501c3?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people not to get too hung up on nonprofit versus not being a nonprofit, because it's really just like a different way that you file your taxes. Like it's
Mm.
almost more for your accountant to worry about than you. Um, it definitely does open up eventually opportunity to apply for grants, um, and to be given money by certain corporations. So I think that is one of the benefits of being a 501c3, and pricing for things like insurance are different, and it's just different rules, but it's really kind of on like a more granular administrative level.
Mm.
Um, but I do think that if your group is considering applying for grants, it is to your benefit. But there's also a ton of ways to apply for grants through a fiscal sponsor or to partner with another person that has a nonprofit status. For the type of work that we wanted to do, I think we were all just like, yeah, it makes sense. And it wasn't really a big conversation we had, because everything from the jump, we always wanted to be for the community and offering services. Um, but we have also had a for-profit arm, but it's always been more of a strategic way to be able to like fund more money into the organization rather than like a political statement, which I think
Yeah.
sometimes it can seem that way.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of organizations will have a for-profit and a nonprofit arm, and the for-profit does like consulting, and then the nonprofit does more of the kind of service and community-oriented work. Um, but it gets kind of into these granular details where we were coming, we all come from kind of more of a commercial and art background. None of us come from a nonprofit background. So while we started this nonprofit, all of our connections were like outside of this world. And so we initially got a lot of our funding from brand partnerships. And so our nonprofit status actually kind of became a hindrance when we were working with these brands because they weren't able to technically donate to us because we were too young. And there's all these rules around nonprofits needing so many years of tax returns in order to be vetted by both corporations and grants. So while we started as a nonprofit in 2020, I would say we weren't really eligible for even any grants until our third year of operating because a lot of people, they just kind of want to know that you're around for the long term. So
Yeah.
they, there's all these kind of barriers. There's even grants that we're still not eligible for, or this will be our first year that we'll be eligible for, in our fifth year. So yeah, I think there's definitely pros and cons to it, but hopefully if you're creative and you want to be serving your community, there's someone that you can pay and hire to worry about
Yeah.
what's the best situation for
All the
you,
admin stuff.
the admin stuff, rather than kind of getting sucked into that whole world.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said that you met the founders group online. Are they still operating like remotely, or has everyone moved to LA?
Everyone, when we all came together, everyone already lived in LA.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, Right now, we're kind of in this really exciting phase of Black Image Center where we're transitioning from being led by those same founders, myself included, and transitioning away from that. So, we started this project 5 years ago, and we're, yeah, just kind of at this place that I think every business or organization probably should reach eventually, where it's kind of time to pass the baton and bring in new people that are operating on that day-to-day level, just so that the organization can stay fresh, especially since the majority of our community is young people. Um, we just want that fresh energy to stay at the forefront of the organizing work itself. And so, yeah, I'm really excited for the organization to kind of shed a little bit of dead skin, I think, and bring on some new life.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I want to go back to the quote you said earlier, and it's on the website if anyone wants to go read it. But it was, what would the world look like if Black people were equipped to tell our own stories and include all of the nuance that we know is often excluded when our stories are told through the lens of others? And I think that the Black Family Archive programming series that you talked about in the very first segment, Extraordinarily Ordinary, is one of those incredible answers to that question. And the question I want to pose to you is, what is it about photography, specifically Black portraiture, which seems to be the way that you work very often, that is so important to shaping how Black people see themselves now and in the future?
I think a lot of my kind of obsession with portraiture is rooted in my background as a model. So when I was like 14 or 15, I started modeling and I worked as a professional model for about 15 years. And I, through that, was able to be photographed by hundreds of photographers. And so I had this experience that I think a lot of people, regardless of how much time they've spent in front of the camera, will have, which they'll get their portrait taken and then they'll get the photo back and they'll say that looks nothing like me.
Mm.
And so I think as a photographer, my MO is to be able to take photos of people that they love. And when they see it, they're like, that's actually what I look like, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How can people who aren't photographers kind of embody that mentality when just documenting something like on their cell phone or when they're vlogging? I just feel like there's everybody can quote unquote be a photographer. Like yes, but no. Yes, they can, but no, they can't. Through like their phone, right? And there's
Yeah.
these we've got these devices that have the ability to capture thousands and thousands of photos and store all this memory. And at some point, these photos can become non-existent, right? They exist in a cloud, and there's something about also this like felt physical element of photography that's really beautiful that I think maybe people are not as focused on preserving unless it's like a really old photograph. So how do you think that people who don't regularly work in the medium of photography can embody that um, mindset of ensuring that the photographs that stick around after they're long gone are the best representations of themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I think that like something I enjoy about photography is that it forces me to slow down. When I'm taking a photo on my phone, like I find myself kind of holding my breath sometimes. But when I'm working with my camera, it becomes more of like a breath work thing. I do breath work with the people who I take portraits of, all the time. Like we'll be breathing together as we're taking the photo. So I think slowing down is a really huge part as we're creating these photos that um, can kind of allow us to be more mindful with the practice. I also like will go through the photos on my phone a lot and delete photos that I don't like. Especially if I have, 17 photos of the same thing. Um, I don't know, I just think a lot about cloud storage and
Mm-hmm.
like where are those servers? Whose electricity is that? Like, you know what I mean? I think
Yeah,
there's a lot of also environmental impact of being able to take hundreds and hundreds of photos in a day, and they just live on our phones and they're being stored on our phones, but they're also being stored in the cloud. And I think that I don't really know that much about it, but I know there's still an environmental impact of just having so many things, even if they're virtual?
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I read a great book, The Afro Minimalist Guide to Living with Less,
Mm.
and it talked about there's this whole like minimalist movement that has kind of been codified by whiteness. But what does that look like from a Black perspective? And photographs, I think, are one of the things that we cherish maybe more than others because we don't have the ability to trace back generations upon generations and see ourselves reflected. And in today's day and age, younger people, I think, have an incredible ability that's unique to our ancestors that we get to curate, how people see us in the future,
Yeah.
which, I guess can be a good or a bad thing, right? But taking that ability and understanding the different layers of that, including the environmental impact that it has when we do have so much stuff digitally, I think is a really important thing to remember as well and know that we are in charge of the way that people remember us in the future. We'll be right back after a short break. And we're back. We talked a lot about photography, but
Yeah.
you also dabble in film. So please talk about that kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously there's such a crossover between photography and filmmaking as an image-based storytelling practice. And then we've also seen that within our community, people that are photographers are oftentimes like at least interested in filmmaking, if not filmmakers themselves. And so we started collaborating with another group called Cushy Collective to do film screenings out of our space. Um, but to be honest, I love our film screenings, but we're not a theater. And
Mm.
so we do these film screenings as a way to share like this Black film canon that a lot of people might not know about and films that we just like. But I'm also excited to start programming at real theaters because I think that there's so many films that we want to screen, but we're all almost apprehensive to do it at our space because we feel like it deserves
Mm.
that real kind of theater seating
Yeah.
and the surround sound and just the infrastructure that, we don't have at our space because our space is multi-purpose and it's a community space and we're not, fully set up for film screenings. So we've done these film screenings and I think they've been really successful and just been a really cool way to get people in the space and start conversations around films that have so much history in our community. But I think we're really excited to do those in intentionally created theaters.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit earlier about how Black Image Center is transitioning. And I know that recently the physical location closed down, or it will close down soon. I'm not really sure what the final date is, but it's going
Yeah.
away. Can you talk about the future of Black Image Center and what it looks like and feels like? How is it expanding beyond this physical location?
Yeah, totally. So right now it's April 11th. This is our last month in this space. And so we're going to be having a couple more programs throughout the rest of the month. And then April 27th, I don't know when this is coming out, but in case it comes out before then, April 27th is kind of our last party in this space. I think that we tried to be really careful when crafting the language around what's happening at Black Image Center and we're moving out and but we're not closing because we didn't start in this space and we've kind of always operated both here and outside of here.
Hmm.
And so a lot of our programming like Black Family Archive has started in other locations and has been taking place at other locations and will just kind of continue to take place all throughout the city. I think for us, it felt really important to have a physical space, especially when we first started, to physically hold space for our community in a really consistent way. But our lease is ending, and kind of with what I was saying earlier about this transition from being led by the people that originally created Black Image Center, I think that with the ending of our lease, it's kind of in this perfect time where the organization can kind of do this internal restructure. It's kind of, again, going into really kind of granular administrative things that
Yeah.
have needed to be done for a while, but we've just kind of put our heart and souls into making the space as best as it can be and kind of maintaining the quality of programming that we wanted to maintain. And so a lot of the back end stuff kind of fell to the wayside as we've been really putting our heart into programming. So internally, that looks like hiring new board members and creating a strategic plan and hiring a new executive director so that the decision about where we go next or what we do next is kind of informed by like a more holistic group of people than like someone like me who's just been in it for the last 5 years. And I don't really have that outside perspective anymore because this has just been my day-to-day life for so long now. Um, and, I was with a group of founders this weekend at this gathering that my friend hosts, and we were all talking about founder syndrome, which I think is something that is such a slippery slope that it's your baby and you just want it to be perfect, but after a while, you just have to kind of just trust that you've done enough to put it on its own 2 feet and that it can walk without you. And so this kind of next phase of Black Image Center is going to be hopefully kind of bolstered by these things that we're doing on the back end that can ensure that Black Image Center really is as sustainable as we want it to be, and no one's burning out or kind of feeling any resentment towards the project.
Sure. Yeah. What do you see as your role as it expands? Because right now you're the executive director. If you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I think my role, I really have always used the word steward.
Mm.
So I think that's still like really what it feels like is important. I think an important part of that role is like responding to the reality of the space and of the community and of the energy that like Black Image Center really kind of has like a life of its own, and it will kind of tell us what it needs.
Hmm.
And I think my role is just being open to hearing that and being honest with myself about how I can support that.
Can you talk about the artist residency that Black Image Center is producing, curating,
Yeah.
however you want to describe it? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So the artist residency, it's kind of the perfect example of how we're programming without this physical space that we're in right now. So we're going to be starting in mid-April, or sorry, mid-May. It's called the California Coast and Color Artist Residency, and it's all about Black life on the coast. And so it's over the course of 5 weeks, and these artists are going to be able to learn from Black scientists, surfers, underwater photographers, like really trying to create multiple different access points for them to learn all about like how Black people have been engaging with the water and with the coast for forever, and how it looks like today. And I think so much of the work that we do at Black Image Center is kind of highlighting how if you have a certain interest, there's probably a way that you can make a living as a photographer capitalizing on that interest.
Mm.
And lots of people reach out to us looking for photographers for events, for family portraits, for so many different types of things. But I would say that one of the hardest categories to find is Black photographers that are working in the environmental and like landscape
Mm.
arena. And so we're working with Essence Minity, who's someone that's been in our community for years and is really tapped in and engaged with a lot of different environmental organizations. And we've worked with her to design this program that is really taking participants through this curriculum that starts off by kind of giving them a lay of the land. And I think that's so important because there are so many structural, economic, and racial barriers for people to even get to the coast. Even if you live in the city, there's a lot of people that never make it to the beach. And so we're going to be starting off by talking about those barriers to entry and then going into different career paths and different ways that people are engaging on the coast. They're going to be doing surf lessons and intro to scuba diving workshops and learning from some really, really incredible photographers that a lot of their work is around the California coast. So I'm really excited. I think it's just going to be this really amazing opportunity. And we've been planning this for almost a year now, but I think especially after the fires that happened this January in LA, it is just such an amazing opportunity to like get people connected with the land that we're on. I
Mhm.
think a lot of us during the fires realized we don't really know that much about the ecology of the land that we're on. And,
Mm.
maybe we've heard that Indigenous people do burns, but then the government is kind of stopping them from doing these controlled burns. And so there's so many different things that people might have heard of, but this is going to be such an incredible opportunity to really develop that relationship with land that Black people have always had, but we've been stripped of in really intentional ways in the past. So I'm really incredibly excited. And then at the end of the program, the cohort is going to be presenting their work. So I'm just really excited to also be able to share with our community. That's something that we do after all of our artist residencies is we have some kind of exhibition or showcase where folks can come and kind of see what people have been working on. All of our artist residencies have had completely different themes in the past. Our most recent one was all about fashion photography. We've done ones that are based around specific Black artists. We did one that was all about surf photography, or no, not surf photography, skateboarding photography
Mhm.
and photographing artists and musicians when they're in motion. So it's been really cool to build out this curriculum with Essence because we've done photo walks before, but I
Mhm.
think it's something that we've all kind of wanted to do. And I think now that we're not going to be in our space anymore, it kind of opens up opportunities where we don't feel like we have to do everything in the space anymore, but there's so much more opportunity to kind of stretch our legs out again and do kind of the more pop-up and guerrilla style programming that we were doing before we moved in.
Nice. How big is the cohort?
Our cohorts are typically 10 to 12 artists.
Okay.
So um, we haven't confirmed the artist yet. So I can't say for this group.
Yeah,
But yeah, they're typically like around 10 to 12 people.
nice. You mentioned photo walks. Can you talk a little bit about Black Image Center and the photo walk programming?
Yeah, the photo walks I think are also a really great example about how our programming gets developed. Those were an idea that obviously we didn't invent the idea of photo walks. Those have existed for a really long time. But a person in our community approached us and said, "Hey, I really want to do photo walks, and I think you guys should be doing photo walks. So let's work together and start developing a photo walk program." And so we did our first one we started at Reuben Ingold Park in View Heights. And the turnout was insane. It was so many people that showed up. Um, and I think after that, we were like, okay, this is something people want. The idea of a photo walk is where you're literally just going on a walk with a bunch of people who have their cameras. So we brought a couple of extra cameras in case someone wanted to join but didn't have a camera, and we paid for them to get their film developed. And it's just like a really great way to get outside and to also maybe practice shooting on a camera that you haven't touched in a while or you're not super comfortable with.
Mhm.
And we have done one at the beach. We did one also last year at Kenneth Hahn, which is a really beautiful park that's really close by Black Image Center. And that one was also really well attended. And it's just been really fun, especially the one at Kenneth Hahn. We were able to partner with another organization that's housed at the park, and that was called the Nature Nexus Institute. And they set us up with these two incredible tour guides, and they led our walk and they pointed out all of these indigenous plants and native birds. And I feel like it was just one of my favorite programs that we've done because I got to learn so much about this park that I'm at least once a week. I go on walks there all the time, but they were able to highlight these really intentional parts of the park that I just didn't know about beforehand.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm really excited to kind of build upon and create this residency around.
We'll be right back after a short break. And we're back. I'd love to transition into the rapid fire buzzwords segment of the
Okay.
podcast. So this is the part where I just read off a bunch of words, kind of like a word association game. I'll say a word and then just let me know the first word or small phrase that comes to your mind instantly. Okay.
Okay.
Art,
Book.
archives,
Family.
autonomy,
Oh man. Black.
Los Angeles,
Home.
photography,
Maya.
storytelling,
Griot.
community.
Goods. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. It's fine.
I'm sorry to anyone that had to hear that. It's just my association, but it's not,
It's
that's not
hey, it's all
everything.
valid. It's all valid. Imagination,
Freedom.
Nuance.
Culture.
Intersectionality.
Human.
Yay. Thank you for indulging me.
Yeah, of course.
Um, so we're nearing the end. At the end of each podcast, I want to ask our guests to contribute one or two titles to the Black Ordinary's digital library. And so what books do you have for us today?
Yeah, so the first book, I wish I had a physical copy, but it's in my car. I forgot to bring it in, is my book, which is called Light Brown Butterfly, that I recently self-published. And I'm Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thanks so much. I'm in the very beginning of like starting to promote it and talk about it in a more public way, but it's a photo series that I've been working on for the last couple of years, and it's kind of like been in my brain for the last 10 years. And I was able to get a lot of amazing support and mentorship and resources to create this book over the last couple of years. And I'm just really excited to offer it to the world. The photos in it are a series of self-portraits. So it's mainly photos of myself. And the work is kind of grappling with my experience investigating and healing from sexual trauma. And so, really kind of looking into my lineage and the women in my family, but also kind of my personal experiences and the kind of opportunities available to confront and heal different types of trauma.
When is it launching and where can somebody find it?
Yeah, I would say follow me on Instagram at Maya June. This summer, I'm hoping to do like a short book tour across the country. So, going to be like going to different local bookstores and chatting about the book and selling it at bookstores and then also on my website, which is just my full name, mayajunemansour.com.
Nice. Okay.
And then my second book is called I Just Want to Surf, and it is by Gabriella and Gotti Jones. And I thought a lot about that book as I was designing my book because my book is also really personal. And the way that Gabriella designed her book to have this feeling of being a photo book, but it also feels like a diary, but also feels like a zine. And there's a lot of different textures and paper types, and the photos in it are really beautiful. And there's a lot of like really personal essays, and I just really, really, really love that book. And the photos are all about Black women and non-binary folks in the surf community in Southern California.
Oh, wow. Is there anything else that you want to share about your practice or about Black Image Center?
I don't know. I feel like this was a really good interview and yeah, just really well researched. And I loved all of your questions. And it's so great to be able to kind of be the one, you know, in control of our narrative and share about my work as a photographer, but also as someone that's kind of been along the ride at Black Image Center for the last 5 years. And I just love the work that we've all been able to do. It's been entirely a group effort by so many people outside of the core group that came together in 2020 as the founders. And I'm really excited about what these next couple of years are going to bring Black Image Center.
One last thing, where can people find Black Image Center?
Yeah, so Instagram and our newsletter are kind of the best two places to keep track of us. Our Instagram is at Black Image Center. And then you can sign up for our newsletter on our website on the FAQ page.
Well, thank you again. It's been so lovely talking to you.
Thank you. And it's been such an honor. I'm so excited to be on this podcast. And I love the work that you're doing as well. It's really important.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Black Ordinary podcast. The Black Ordinary is a grassroots platform dedicated to uplifting the collective memories of Black America. Be sure to check out our collective memory database and more resources on our website, theblackordinary.com. For more Black art, Black archives, and Black autonomy, you can follow us on Instagram at The Black Ordinary and subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Black Ordinary. Stay Black and stay blessed. See you soon.